Life is full of unexpected losses. People walk into our lives, and just when we think they are meant to stay forever, they leave. Some drift away, some betray us, and some are taken away by death itself. We ask, why, God? Why did you let them go? Why did you take them from me? But what if I told you it was never an accident? God took them away for a reason. Maybe they were never meant to be part of your destiny. Maybe they were holding you back from the life God was preparing for you. Maybe they were a test, not a blessing. Too often we hold on to people who were never meant to stay. We cry over closed doors that God Himself shut. But what if that loss was actually your protection? Look at your life. How many times has God removed someone and later you realized it was for the best? How many betrayals, heartbreaks, and departures left you in pain only for you to grow stronger afterward? God never takes anything away without a purpose. Sometimes He removes people to protect you from harm you couldn't see. Other times He allows painful goodbyes to push you closer to Him. He may take them away to make room for something better, something greater, something that aligns with His divine plan. The Bible says in Isaiah 55:8-9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." What does this mean? It means that even when we don't understand, we can trust Him. Think about Judas and Jesus. Judas walked with Jesus, talked with Him, shared meals with Him, but in the end he betrayed Him. If Judas had never left, the path to salvation would not have been fulfilled. Some people are meant to leave so that God's greater plan can unfold. Maybe God took that person out of your life because they were limiting you. Maybe their presence was distracting you from your real purpose. Maybe their season in your life was simply over. Stop chasing people God has removed. Stop reopening doors He has locked. If they were meant to stay, nothing could have taken them away. You may not see the purpose now, but trust in God's plan. His decisions are never random. Every loss, every goodbye, every person who leaves it is all part of a bigger picture. God doesn't just take, He also gives. He gives healing after heartbreak. He gives strength after loss. He gives new beginnings after painful endings. So today, let go of what you were never meant to hold on to. Trust God's wisdom. Trust His timing. Trust that what He takes, He replaces with something even greater. Because His plan is always better than ours. There are moments in life when people we love and trust suddenly leave us. Sometimes it happens unexpectedly without any explanation, leaving us confused and questioning why. We wonder what went wrong, what we could have done differently, or why things had to change. But what if the loss of that person was not a mistake? What if it was God's divine protection over your life? God sees what we cannot see. He hears conversations we never hear. He knows the hearts of people in ways we never will. While we judge people based on their words, actions, and how they make us feel, God sees their true motives. He sees the jealousy hidden behind a smile, the dishonesty behind kind words, and the potential betrayal in someone's heart long before it ever happens. When God removes someone from your life, He is not punishing you. He is protecting you from what you cannot yet understand. Think about a parent who pulls their child away from the edge of a cliff. The child may cry, scream, or even feel angry, not realizing the danger they were in. But the parent sees what the child does not and acts out of love. In the same way, God removes certain people from our lives, not because He wants to hurt us, but because He wants to protect us. That relationship you thought would last forever, that friendship you believed was unbreakable, or that person you depended on so much may have been leading you away from your purpose without you even realizing it. Sometimes we are so blinded by our emotions that we don't recognize the harm a person is causing us. We ignore red flags, dismiss warning signs, and make excuses for toxic behavior because we don't want to lose them. But God, in His infinite wisdom, steps in and removes them before they can do more damage. It might hurt in the moment, but later, when the truth is revealed, you will see that His decision was an act of mercy. There are times when we pray for something or someone believing it is what's best for us. We ask God to bless a relationship, open a door, or make someone stay, but instead He takes them away. We might feel rejected, abandoned, or forgotten. But what if God was actually answering our prayers in a way we didn't expect? What if He removed that person because they were never part of the future He planned for us? What if the loss was actually a blessing in disguise? God never removes without replacing. When He takes something away, He is making space for something better. It may take time to see it, but trust that He is working for your good. The pain of losing someone will not last forever, but the protection and purpose of God in your life will. Instead of asking why someone left, ask what God is making room for. Instead of holding on to the past, trust in His plan for the future. One day you will look back and understand why things had to happen the way they did. You will see the hidden dangers you were spared from, the heartbreak that was prevented, and the greater blessings that came after the loss. Until then, trust that God knows what He's doing. His ways are higher than ours, and His love for you is greater than you can comprehend. If God removes someone from your life, let them go. Trust His protection, even when it hurts, because one day you will thank Him for it. Life is like a book filled with different chapters, each one shaping who we are. Along the way, people come into our lives, some stay for a lifetime, while others are only there for a season. We often struggle to let go of those who leave, wondering why things had to change. But what if their time in your life was meant to end? What if God removed them because their role in your story was complete? Not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some people are placed in your life to teach you something, to help you grow, or to support you through a particular season. Maybe they were there to encourage you during a tough time, to teach you a lesson about trust, or to prepare you for something greater. But when their purpose is fulfilled, God moves them out of the way. It's not a punishment, it's part of His plan. We often try to hold on to people longer than we should. We cling to relationships that no longer serve us, friendships that have run their course, and connections that God has already told us to release. But when we do this, we only delay what God is trying to do in our lives. Holding on to the past can prevent us from stepping into the future God has prepared for us. Think about a tree in different seasons. In autumn, the leaves begin to fall, not because the tree is dying, but because it is preparing for new growth. If the tree tried to hold on to its leaves, it would not be able to produce fresh ones in the spring. The same is true in our lives. When God removes people, He is making space for something new. It's not always easy to understand why someone had to leave. Maybe it was a friend you thought would always be there, a relationship you invested your heart into, or a mentor who once guided you. But instead of asking, why did they leave? Ask, what was their purpose in my life? If you take a moment to reflect, you'll realize that each person played a role in your growth. Some were there to teach you patience, others to show you strength, and some to push you toward your destiny. When you try to force someone to stay beyond their purpose, it often leads to pain. You may notice the relationship becoming strained, misunderstandings increasing, or the connection feeling forced. That's because they have already fulfilled their role in your life, and it's time to move forward. Trust that God knows when to bring people in and when to take them out. Sometimes God removes people not because they are bad, but because they are no longer part of the next season of your life. Just as a teacher is there for a certain grade level, some people were only meant to be in your life for a specific stage. Once that stage is over, their presence is no longer needed for your journey. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or devaluing the time spent with someone. It simply means trusting that God's plan is bigger than what we can see. It means believing that the people who are meant to stay will stay, and those who are meant to leave must go for a reason. If someone has walked out of your life, don't chase after them. Trust that God is leading you towards something better. Every ending is a new beginning. When one door closes, another opens. The pain of loss will fade, but the lessons and growth will remain. Trust that God knows what He's doing. His timing is perfect, and His plans for you are greater than anything you can imagine. Let go of what no longer belongs and embrace the new season ahead. One day you will look back and understand why things had to happen the way they did. Until then, walk forward in faith, knowing that God is guiding every team journey. Too often we attach our happiness and security to people and situations that were never meant to last forever. We convince ourselves that we need a certain person in our lives to feel complete, or that a specific job or opportunity is the only path to success. But God sees what we cannot see. He knows what is truly best for us, and sometimes that means removing things, even when it hurts. Think about a child reaching for something dangerous. The child may not understand why their parent takes it away. They might cry, feel frustrated, or even feel betrayed. But the parent knows better. They see the danger the child cannot see. In the same way, God removes things from our lives not to harm us, but to protect us and lead us towards something better. When people walk away, our first reaction is often to chase after them. We beg them to stay. We try to prove our worth. We replay every conversation, wondering what we did wrong. But the truth is, if someone was meant to stay in your life, they would have stayed. God does not take away what is truly meant for you. If something is removed, it is because it no longer serves His purpose in your life. Rejection is painful, but it is also a powerful teacher. It teaches us to depend on God instead of people. It forces us to grow, to change, and to trust in His plan, even when we don't understand it. Many times, rejection is actually redirection. It is God guiding you away from something that would have held you back and leading you towards something far greater. Look at the stories of people in the Bible. Joseph was betrayed and rejected by his own brothers, sold into slavery and thrown into prison. But every rejection in his life was actually a setup for something greater. God was redirecting him toward his destiny to become a great leader who would save many lives. If Joseph had stayed in his comfortable life at home, he would never have reached the position God had planned for him. The same is true for you. That relationship that ended, God saw something you didn't. That friendship that faded away, it served its purpose. That job that rejected you, maybe God was protecting you from something that wasn't meant for you. What feels like rejection now will one day make sense as redirection. It's easy to focus on the pain of loss. But what if you shifted your perspective? Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Start asking, what is God leading me toward? Because the truth is, God never takes something away without giving something better in return. It may not happen immediately, and you may not see it right now, but if you trust Him, you will find that His plan is always greater than anything you could have imagined. So instead of dwelling on who left, trust in the one who remains. Instead of chasing after what is gone, focus on what is ahead. Instead of mourning what didn't work out, prepare for the blessings that are coming. God's redirection is not a punishment. It's a sign of His love and His greater plan for your life. Rejection is not the end of your story. It is simply the closing of one chapter so that a new, better one can begin. Trust that God is leading you exactly where you need to be, and one day you will look back and realize that every no was actually a yes to something far greater. There are moments in life when people we love, trust, and depend on suddenly walk away. A friend you thought would always be there stops answering your calls. A relationship you invested in falls apart. A person you relied on lets you down. In those moments, the pain can feel unbearable and the questions come rushing in. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why did God take them away? But what if the reason they left was not about them, but about you? What if God was removing them to teach you a deeper lesson, one that could change your life forever? Sometimes we put too much faith in people instead of in God. We rely on them for our happiness, our security, and even our purpose. But people are human, they are imperfect, they change, they fail, and they disappoint. God, on the other hand, is unchanging, eternal, and completely faithful. When He removes someone from your life, it may be because He wants to shift your dependence away from people and back onto Him. Think about it. When everything is going well, when you have the support of friends and loved ones, it's easy to feel strong. But what happens when they leave? Do you crumble? Do you feel lost and empty? If so, it may be because you built your foundation on them instead of on God. And God, in His mercy, sometimes takes people away so that you can learn the most important truth of all. He alone is your source. We see this lesson throughout the Bible. Look at Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his health, and even his children. His friends misunderstood him, and his wife told him to give up. But in the midst of his pain, Job did not turn away from God. Instead, he declared, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away." Or consider the life of Elijah. At one point, God sent ravens to feed him and provided a brook for him to drink from. But then the brook dried up. Did this mean God had abandoned him? No. It simply meant that God was moving him to something greater. If the brook had never dried up, Elijah would have never moved forward into the next stage of his journey. The same is true for you. If people never left, if relationships never ended, if everything remained the same, you might never grow into the person God created you to be. So what should you do when God removes someone from your life? First, don't fight it. Trust that He sees what you cannot see. Second, instead of asking why, ask what? What is God trying to teach me? What is He preparing me for? And most importantly, draw closer to Him. The more you depend on God, the less you will fear the loss of people. God's plan is always bigger than what we can see. Sometimes He allows people to walk away because He knows they were holding you back. Other times He removes them to create space for something greater. But one thing is certain. He does not want you to put your trust in temporary, fragile human relationships. He wants you to put your trust in Him. If you are facing the pain of someone leaving, take heart. It is not the end of your story. It is an invitation to go deeper with God, to rely on Him fully, and to find your true security in His unshakable love. Because people may fail you, but God never will. Pain is one of the greatest teachers in life. It has a way of pushing us, stretching us, and forcing us to grow in ways we never imagined. When we experience loss, when people walk away, betray us, or disappear, it hurts deeply. But what if that pain wasn't meant to break you, but to build you? What if the loss you are experiencing is actually pushing you closer to your purpose? Think about Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and falsely accused. From the outside, it looked like his life was falling apart, but in reality, God was setting him up for something far greater. Every painful experience, every rejection, every moment of suffering was positioning him for his destiny. If Joseph's brothers had never betrayed him, he would have never ended up in Egypt. If he had never been in Egypt, he would have never risen to power. And if he had never risen to power, he would not have been able to save his family and an entire nation from famine. The very people who tried to destroy him unknowingly helped him step into his purpose. The same is true for you. The pain you are facing right now, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the loneliness, is not the end of your story. It is a part of your journey. It may not make sense now, but one day you will look back and see how every loss led you to something greater. Look at Jesus. He was betrayed by one of his own disciples. Judas, who had walked with him, seen his miracles, and heard his teaching, sold him for 30 pieces of silver. Peter, one of his closest friends, denied even knowing him. When Jesus was arrested, the very people he had helped, healed, and loved turned against him. Yet through all the betrayal and suffering, God's plan was unfolding. Jesus' greatest pain, his crucifixion, became the very thing that led to salvation. Without the cross, there would be no resurrection. Without suffering, there would be no redemption. Your pain has a purpose too. Every struggle is shaping you, strengthening you, and refining you. Sometimes we don't change until we are forced to. We don't grow until we have no choice. The loss of a relationship, the betrayal of a friend, or the disappointment of a broken dream can feel like the end of everything. But in reality, it is often the beginning of something better. Maybe God allowed that person to leave because they were holding you back. Maybe He removed them so that you could step into something greater. Maybe the rejection you faced was actually God's redirection. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is God preparing me for?" Pain teaches us to rely on God in ways that comfort never can. It humbles us, reshapes us, and draws us closer to Him. It burns away distractions and reveals what truly matters. And most importantly, it prepares us for what's next. If you are hurting right now, take heart. This pain will not last forever, but what it produces in you will. You are being prepared for something greater. The loss, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it is not a setback, it is a setup. Just like Joseph, just like Jesus, your pain is pushing you closer to your purpose. Hold on, trust God, and keep moving forward. One day you will look back and realize that everything you lost was leading you to everything you were meant to gain. Life often takes unexpected turns. We make plans, build relationships, and set goals, thinking we know exactly how things should go. But then suddenly everything changes. Someone we thought would be in our life forever walks away. A door we were counting on closes. A dream we worked hard for shatters. In those moments, it's easy to feel lost, hurt, and confused. But while we see only a small piece of the picture, God sees it all. His plan is always greater than ours, even when we don't understand it. Think about the times in your life when you desperately wanted something, but it didn't work out. Maybe you prayed for a relationship to last, but it ended. Maybe you worked hard for an opportunity, but it slipped away. At the time, it felt like a loss. But later you look back and realize that God was protecting you from something you couldn't see. That person who left, they were never meant to stay. That opportunity that didn't work out. It was not God's best for you. He had something better in store, something you couldn't see in the moment. When God removes someone from your life, it is never to harm you. It is always to guide you towards something greater. Imagine you are holding on to something small, a little piece of happiness that you think is all you'll ever need. But God is reaching out with something far greater, something beyond your imagination. The only problem Your hands are too full to receive it. He has to take away the small things so He can give you something much bigger. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 55:8-9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We may not always understand why things happen, but we can trust that God does. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what is coming, and He is preparing us for something far greater than we could ever imagine. Look at the story of Joseph. As a young man, he had dreams of greatness. But before those dreams came true, he faced betrayal, slavery, and years of hardship. At the time, it must have felt like everything was going wrong, but what Joseph didn't know was that God was positioning him for something far greater. Every betrayal, every loss, every painful moment was part of God's greater plan. And in the end, Joseph became a ruler in Egypt, saving countless lives, including the very brothers who had betrayed him. Maybe you are in a season where you feel like you've lost something or someone important. Maybe you don't understand why things had to change, but remember this: God's plan is always greater than yours. What feels like an ending is often just the beginning. That person who walked away, their role in your story was over. That opportunity that fell through, it wasn't the best God had for you. He is leading you somewhere greater, to something better, to a future filled with His purpose. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen?" start asking, "God, what are you preparing me for?" Shift your focus from what was lost to what God is doing, because He is always working behind the scenes, opening new doors, preparing new blessings, and leading you exactly where you need to be. You may not understand right now, it may hurt, but trust that God sees the full picture. His plans for you are good. He is not taking things away to hurt you. He is making room for something greater. Keep your faith strong, keep moving forward, and one day you will look back and realize that everything happened exactly as it was meant to. God's plan is always greater than yours. Trust Him. Life is full of unexpected changes, and sometimes the people we love and the things we cherish are taken away. In those moments, it's easy to feel abandoned, lost, and confused, but God never removes anything without a purpose. What seems like a loss today may be a setup for something far greater tomorrow. God sees the full picture when we can only see a small part. He knows what lies ahead, and He is always working for our good. When He takes someone or something away, it is never to harm us, it is to lead us to something better. Every closed door is a step toward the right one. Every painful goodbye is making space for a new beginning. So instead of holding on to what was, trust in what God is doing. Believe that His plan is greater than your own. He is protecting you, preparing you, and positioning you for something far beyond what you could imagine. One day you will look back and understand why things happened the way they did. Until then, walk by faith, knowing that God's plan is always perfect. Trust Him even when you don't understand. He is leading you to something greater.